Hello. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk with Iris McDuffie about diabetes and what steps we can take as we enjoy this holiday season to better manage this disease and its impact on our life. Iris is a registered dietitian nutritionist with over 16 years of experience in clinical nutrition. She is the founder of Nutrition I Am LLC, a nutrition consulting business dedicated to providing nutrition counseling for individuals diagnosed with chronic disease states. Iris considers herself a clinical and community nutritionist with expertise in renal nutrition. As the new Clemson and Rural Health and Nutrition Agent for Florence and Marion counties, Iris is on a mission to teach individuals how to eat a healthy, balanced diet. Her focus is increasing awareness about chronic kidney disease and what you can do to reduce the risk of being diagnosed. Her most recent interest is social determinants of health in rural health communities. Iris is a member of the Academy of Nutrition and Diabetes, the Renal Practice Group, National Council of Negro Women, and Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Iris graduated from Elizabeth City State University and earned a Master of Science in Clinical Nutrition from the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences and a Master of Science Education from Wake Forest University. Between work and her passion of educating her community, she enjoys cooking and preparing gourmet dishes according to her friends and to her beloved brother. As the host of today's event, Lions Vision Services is thrilled to welcome Iris back to our virtual community. Diabetes has a profound impact on our eyesight and is increasingly a cause of vision loss in the diabetic community. We believe that helping to expand education and awareness and information about how to prevent and manage diabetes is a critical part of our role as protectors and conservators of sight conservation. We're honored to have Iris with us today and honored to hear from Iris as we use this educational opportunity to expand our work. Iris, welcome.
Thank you. And what a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful introduction. Who is that person you're talking about?
That's you.
So anyway, I wanted to bring to your attention some tidbits or some nutrition nuggets, if you will, about how to approach the holiday season. And as we know, this is the season for 'tisn't the season to be jolly, fa la 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 la. And we're going to have lots and lots and lots of food dancing like sugar plums right before our very eyes. So how do we handle making sure that we are planning our portion sizes, we're making very good decisions? And the core of this all is that we're going to maintain those blood sugars and make sure that we're not putting ourselves at risk for hypoglycemia and or hyperglycemia. So those may be big words, but I'm sure you've heard all about them. So just to give you a little bit of insight on some nutrition terminology as it relates to diabetes, I'll just give you a few terms that I may use interchangeably as we talk through this session. So diabetes, which is the condition in which individuals have elevated blood sugars, and those blood sugars are oftentimes elevated mostly because of sometimes the foods that we're eating. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are on top of our game in terms of making sure we are making good decisions when it comes to picking and choosing our foods. Hyperglycemia is a term that you have heard, and it simply means high blood sugar. And it means that for some reason, those blood sugars are elevated. Again, most of the time, some of the time, if not all of the time, it has a lot to do with what we're consuming. Other scenarios may be that we just don't have enough of medication, or we're not taking that medication appropriately. But for the most part, I think it's almost fair to say that a lot of times it dials down to just making sure that we are choosing and selecting good portion sizes and selecting good food choices. And then lastly would be hypoglycemia, and that's when we have low blood sugars. Once again, it could be because we've not had a well-balanced meal, or we've had patterns of eating that have been irregular. And we want to make sure that we focus on making sure that while it's okay for us to monitor our portion size, but it's very important that we make sure that we're eating balanced meals. And the rule of thumb is that we have a meal in between 4 hours from the last meal. So for example, if you had breakfast this morning at 8:30, then you should be ready for your next meal at 12:30. However, once again, as we speak about making sure that we're not elevating our blood sugars or putting ourselves in a position to reduce those blood sugars or to have low blood sugars, we want to make sure that we are eating when we're hungry. So we're not asking you to starve yourself, but we're asking you to be very selective and particular about what it is that you're consuming. So let's look at how we can plan our portions. Right in front of your very eyes is a 9-inch plate, and that is the recommended size of the plate that we recommend and has been found to be evidence-based to support what that plate should look like. So if you look, you'll see that half of that plate consists of fresh fruits and vegetables, either cooked or again, fresh. And then the other half consists of a starch and a entree, we refer to it, or a protein. So half of your plate should be fresh fruits and vegetables. And if you're cooking those vegetables, we want to make sure that we're not cooking them in our usual manner that will increase our intake of saturated fats, our intake of salt, and in some instances, our sugar. So you want to be mindful in terms of how you're preparing those foods. The other half represents the starch and the protein. So when we look at diabetes, one of the things I want to bring to your attention, and this is a nugget that I want you to keep in your back pocket, is that, number one, we've been told that diabetes affects carbohydrates, but diabetes can be also affected by the amount of carbohydrates, the amount of protein, and the amount of fat that we are consuming. So creating that balance is very important. So you want to make sure that your plate consists of about 45 to 60% of carbohydrates, about 35% of fat, and the remaining would be that of protein. So we need to really make sure that we understand what is meant by portion sizes and not to be confused with serving size. So a little bit about serving and portion. Serving simply means this is how much a packet offers. So I'll bring to your attention an example. So when I look at this Roman noodle here, this is a quick go-to food item that most people consume on a regular basis because it is quick and easy. But it also has a huge amount of calories. Now, read my lips. I'm not indicating that this is not something that you can eat, but you want to be able to look at the label and see what this food item offers you so that you'll know exactly what you're consuming. So by definition, when we look at ramen noodles, we're actually looking at this as a carbohydrate. Now, we can make it become a fat. We can make it become a protein by what we add to it. So if you were just to consume this packet by itself, it's chicken flavored. When you add that little packet of seasoning there, it's going to add lots of salt. And just to give you a hint as to how much salt is in this packet, there is 790 milligrams, and we're supposed to be consuming anywhere from 1,500 to 2,300 milligrams. So if you do the math, you've consumed a huge amount of salt here. So please, please, please make sure that you're reading the label. So let's look to your left here, and I'm just going to use my mouse to kind of give you some indications. Over here on the left, this is an indication of all of our non-starchy vegetables. So when you're preparing your meals, you want to make sure that your plate consists of non-starchy vegetables, because it simply means that you're only going to get about 5 grams of carbohydrates from this particular or these particular food items, compared to your starchy vegetables, which would be your corns, your potatoes, your squash, your whole grains, your beans, your milk products, your fruits, etc. Now, once again, these are nuggets of information. We're not telling you that you can't eat these foods, but you're going to get bang for your buck when you have serving sizes of these food items here, your non-starchy vegetables. And over here, this is where you're going to run into some issues or concern where you're going to have to make sure that you monitor those portion sizes so that you're not exceeding the amount of carbohydrates that may potentially elevate your blood sugars. So no one is telling you to take anything out of your diet. We're just asking you to what? Be particular and to make good food choices. So if it's a cooked vegetable over here for your non-starchy vegetables, you can eat as much as you like of these items, because look at this plate here. It says half of your plate should be fresh fruits and vegetables. And fresh fruits and vegetables could be fresh fruits and vegetables that are cooked, or fresh fruits and vegetables that are actually in their natural state. But again, they only provide 5 grams of carbohydrates. Now, here again, we can do a little bit of damage to these food items that are non-starchy by the way that we prepare them. So if you're going to steam them and add lots of butter and salt and all kinds of other things that we know have the potential to add calories and or fat, then that's where you're going to increase your calories, you're going to increase your intake of carbohydrates. And so really, if you look at it, it's better for you to go over here and choose one from the starchy group if you're going to do that. So again, we're not saying that these are choices that you can't have, but you want to look at making sure that your non-starchy vegetables and fruit are going to be a good portion of what you consume on a regular basis versus your starchy vegetables. Now let's take a look at the starchy vegetables. Whole grains, I'm just going to pull that one out. It's recommended that our intake of starchy vegetables be highly composed of your whole grains because they're going to provide fiber. Fiber is going to do great things for us. It's going to increase that level of satiety such that we are full longer, and it has all of the good nutrient stuff that's going to assist with possibly help us to maintain our blood sugar levels. But again, it doesn't mean that you can OD on this particular item because it's better for you. It simply means you're still going to adhere to portion sizes. Winter squash, this looks kind of like a butternut squash here, and this is an item that can also be used in as a part of your vegetables, but it's counted as a starch, and starches mean that they're going to have greater than that of 5 grams of carbohydrates. And again, those carbohydrates and the fat that is added to this food item has a lot to do with how it's prepared. So just keep in mind that starchy vegetables are fine to consume, and fruit, as long as we know how much we're consuming and we are adhering to a portion size. Non-starchy vegetables are much better to complete that 9-inch plate because you're only going to get 5 grams of carbs. So let's move down and look at our protein here. Protein is that other quarter of the plate on the other side of the fresh fruits and vegetables. And if you hold out the palm of your hand, as a female, your palm of your hand is going to be what is considered a serving size for a protein, or in most cases an entree, and it would be based on the thickness of your hand. As a male, the male's hand is going to be just a tad bit larger, so that portion size is going to be just a tad bit large as well. So we're looking at anywhere from 2 to 3 ounces of protein, and you can use this picture as a good indication of what would be a serving size. Now let's back up there for a minute and go to some of our famous popular restaurants. And we know that chicken is always, for the most part, it doesn't look like that's the case here lately with the prices of groceries, but chicken for the most part is probably safe to say that it's one of the most economical portions of most economical food items to purchase when it comes to protein. So in some instances, because it's cheaper, if you will, some restaurants will give you more of that particular food item. So we have to know how much we need to consume. So if you're getting a quarter of a chicken, whether it's breast or whatever the lower part of the chicken, then you need to know that this may be too much. So that could be the ways that you're able to share that meal to make sure that you're not consuming too much of protein. And we recommend that you look at ways in terms of how those proteins are prepared and what we're using to season those proteins. So if you look here on the bottom, you'll see that chicken or poultry is an example of a protein. Eggs and cheeses are examples of a protein. Fish, salmon, and tuna, lean beef, nuts, nut butters, shrimp, and tofu. So any of these are fair game as long as we adhere to a portion size. And one tip here is if you're going to really look at monitoring your intake and using this guide as your reference, then you need to plan those meals so that you're not caught up in making your eyes longer than your stomach, if you will, so that you're consuming adequate portions, and in this case, a serving of a protein, and you're creating a balance of that meal. So you want that plate to be half fresh fruits and vegetables, whether it's cooked or raw. The other half to be divided between your starch, which would be your starchy vegetable, and then that of your protein or entree. And so you can make good choices by selecting from these food items over here. You see we have beans, we have lentils, and we have peas. So again, you wouldn't have beans and peas with that of mashed potatoes. I know it's common, but you want to decide when you are preparing that meal, what is going to be that starchy vegetable and what is going to be that particular serving size for that food item. So when we cook our starchy vegetables, I think a half a cup of a cooked vegetable for the most part is considered a serving size. It changes a little bit when you look at your beans and your pastas and things of that sort. So keeping in mind what that means in terms of a serving size, and I'm using the term serving size kind of interchangeably, but serving size usually is based on how much is in a packet. Portion size is how much we need to eat to meet those nutrient needs. So keep that in your pocket as a nugget of information. Okay, I'm going to move forward here and push this up so that we can actually interact a little bit. So if you would be able to place your fist against that fist there, it kind of gives you an idea of how to plan your portions. So your fist is going to represent a cup, and that gives you an idea in terms of how much of a food item you should be consuming. So let's take a look here. The healthy tip here is choose low-cost recipes and meals, and recipes with fewer ingredients are oftentimes going to be cheaper and quicker to make, and oftentimes, depending on what those ingredients are, may even be a little bit better on our caloric intake. But now, that's not always the case, but here is a website here, a reference that you can take a few minutes to take a look at, and that's diabetesfoodhub.org. If you go to the American Diabetes Association website, they have a program called No Diabetes by Heart, and that No Diabetes by Heart is an initiative to make us aware of all of what we need to know about the connection or the link between diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And in that particular initiative, they have all kinds of resources. And one of those is the Diabetes Food Hub. Really cool to take a look at because they have 1,000 recipes, to say the least. And oftentimes you find where persons have actually tried those recipes and they've kind of tweaked them to make sure that they are meeting the pleasures of their palate. So they've added some things and taken some things out. So I encourage you to take a few minutes in your spare time to go to that website and take a look and see if you can find some food items or some recipes that you might be interested in trying. This is a perfect time to make some adjustments during the holiday season to give a twist to how you've usually prepared those meals and also make it a little healthier. Fats are always high in calories. And as I said, you want to make sure that you're not exceeding that 30 to 35% in terms of how much we're consuming on a regular basis. So eat often. Your oil-based salad dressings, your vinaigrettes, your oils and your vinegars. Eat more of your canola oils, your olive oils, your sunflower oils, your peanut oils. Eat more of your olives, your avocados, your nuts, your seeds, your peanut butter, and your almond butter. And again, this program is not to replace what you and your medical provider have discussed. I'm not a nurse nor am I a doctor, but I am a dietitian, and so I'm oftentimes seen as the food police. I'm giving you information that's going to assist you with making good, healthy food choices. However, keep in mind, if you have any allergies, you need to pay close attention to what those food items are consumed of. So again, taking a few minutes to read the label and look at the ingredients on the back of the food item. So eat often, as I said, your oil-based salad dressings, vinaigrettes, and oil dressings, using canola oil, olive oil, sunflower oil, peanut oils, avocados, olive seeds, peanut butter, and or butter as it is medically feasible for you, and knowing what is considered a serving size. Sometimes you're going to be given the opportunity to choose your low-fat, creamy salad dressings like light ranch, and you can have something like that with maybe some carrots or a few florets of broccoli. Maybe if you like grilled asparagus, you could dip those into light ranch. And it depends if you're one of those persons that have to have something dipped into something. Those are some different items that you can consider. Your oils, sometimes that you should be considering would be your corn, your soybean, your safflower, and your sesame. And then your mayonnaise sometimes. Mayonnaise is a high-calorie fat food item simply because of what it consists of. And you want to limit the full-fat creamy salad dressings like ranch, blue cheese, Thousand Island, any of those that we know are just delicious on the lips and not so nutritious on the hips, if you will. So butter, lard, and coconut oil, these are the oils that you definitely want to understand that they are truly saturated, high in fat, margarine, and your creams. So when you're making your selections about your fats, consider what you should be eating often, what you should consider eating sometimes, and then what you should limit. And also know that a serving of any of these items listed here as fats is considered a tablespoon. And so you want to pay close attention to that. That's what's going to be listed on the label in terms of that serving size. Okay, so I think I've been talking long enough. Do you have any questions or concerns?
Always. Iris, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and overview. I've been taking lots of notes throughout, just knowing how easy it is this time of year to get those bigger portions and bigger helpings around the holidays. So thank you so much for these wonderful tidbits. A couple of questions that do come to mind, and some from our listeners as well. You mentioned that the 9-inch plate is the kind of the foundation. That's the recommendation. That's what a lot of this is based off of. There are going to be a lot of different plate sizes at our dinner tables throughout the holidays. What are some easy ways we can adapt that 9-inch model if we find ourselves having to work with a larger plate or a smaller plate?
That's a very good question. One thing I would recommend you do is, as you are preparing to sit down at the table and dine, find out if where you are having your meal, if they have any paper plates. And you could look at those paper plates to kind of get an eyeball in terms of what those, that large plate would, when you're comparing what you would need to kind of eyeball and see how you want to match that up with the 9-inch. The other thing is to, if you have a large plate, then I would recommend identifying what is something that is a must-have. We all going to have those pleasures of the palate. And if you want to try everything, then just have a tasting of it. I would think anywhere from 1 to 2 tablespoons would be an appropriate tasting. One of the things that I've noticed that we do at meals or even restaurants too, we have plates that are piled high. So you want to eliminate that. So if that plate is large, just get a sample of just about anything that you are willing to have a taste of to meet those pleasures of your palate, and do small portions of it. That would be the recommendation, because it's a very good thought to consider, because we have our nice Christmas china out. Sometimes they're big plates and it's more decoration than anything else, but that's just a time where we really consume lots of foods. So again, I would recommend either taking a few minutes to ideally kind of eyeball what that 9-inch plate looks like, and then using that as your mnemonic device when you go to these different places. And if you practice doing that at home, or even when you go to restaurants, it's not going to be very difficult for you to make that transition when you go to other places outside of the norm. So very good question. Excellent question.
Wonderful. So many of us, Iris, are going to be cooking in the kitchen this holiday season and preparing these wonderful meals with these different ingredients and portions. Where is the best place for the chefs that might be watching this to find those non-starchy vegetables that really make up the majority of what that portion should be? Should we be looking at grocery stores or farmers markets? What's the best option? And then if we find ourselves in a situation where we have limited options, what should we be looking for, and what recommendations would you have for chefs picking those ingredients?
Excellent question. For the chefs, the chefs for the holidays, I would recommend, if it's all possible, to try your farmers markets first. Second, I would say grocery stores. And one thing we have to keep in mind is to plan ahead of time so that you're not left with remnants of what would have been your first or second or third option. So if you plan early, and then even in buying some of those items, so some of your green leafy vegetables, some of them are not really going to be able to withstand temperatures that are inside the house. So when you purchase those items, make sure that they are in a cool place. But if fresh is an option, then you're frozen without the kit and caboodles of all of the different types of inserted seasonings that go along with it. So if you're buying it frozen and it has a seasoning packet with it, one of the things you can do is add your own seasoning. Okay, so be mindful of the salts and the sugars and things of that sort. Some of your food items that are already pre-packed, a lot of them already have the seasoning in it. But for example, the ramen noodles, it has a packaged seasoning here, and that's an option. It's not something that you have to do. But when you make the decision to not use that, make sure that you have something you've already researched and you know what that alternative would be. And then if that's not the option, the fresh, the frozen, then we could go with canned. Again, I have to express how important it is that we not get caught up into getting rid of what is already in the pantry or whatever we have on hand, but making some modifications. So if you have canned goods, you could take those items out of the can, rinse them thoroughly, and season them with something already light in salt or sugar or whatever the seasoning you're going to use. So we don't want to impose on anyone in terms of saying, oh, if you don't have this, you got to get rid of that. You want to just make sure that you make the necessary amends to be accommodating. And again, the reality is everything has gone up exceedingly high this year. I think eggs are something like 40% higher than they were this time last year. And I think I know for Thanksgiving, they said that the Thanksgiving meal in terms of what you had to buy in general was something like 28 to 40% increase. And, your entrees probably were a big portion of that, but things in general that you were purchasing. So keeping that in mind. And also, again, planning your meals and making sure everybody has a hand into what they're doing, and then kind of taking the responsibility off of you so that you can actually enjoy and not feel overwhelmed with this whole process of being the chef. So that would be my recommendation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And you teed up a perfect segue to the next question here. As you might imagine, Iris, some of the individuals that might be watching this might have a strong desire to want to implement some of these healthy lifestyle choices, but are facing some really challenging financial circumstances. As you know, it's expensive to eat healthy. So help us navigate some of the difficult decisions that individuals on a tight budget might be facing as they're putting their holiday meals together. What is the long-term cost of diabetes? How does that relate to what is the benefit financially to making an investment in healthier foods now to decrease those long-term healthcare costs that are going to be associated with diabetes? And what would you say to someone who is struggling right now to make ends meet and to make those healthy choices?
That's a very that's a lot of questions in a question, but let me see if I can handle that. One thing I would do is what we recommend is again, planning ahead of time. If you know that this holiday season brings us into the presence of lots of parties and lots of family members and lots of gatherings. And so planning ahead of time, knowing that, okay, on Friday night, I'm going to a party with family and friends, or it's the office party, or it's this on Sunday night, and then the big Christmas dinner on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. Planning ahead of time, making sure that you're not missing meals, because we tend to miss meals as we approach holiday meals because we think we want to really enjoy that food. But as a healthy person and a person who has diabetes, I would recommend that you not starve yourself or hold off on breaking a trend that has already been in place just because you're going to have a meal. Because as a healthy person or a person with diabetes, you're going to put yourself at risk for being hungry for a longer period of time, which means that by the time you get ready to eat, that you're going to overdo it because you're trying to make up for lost time and you haven't had anything to work with. And a person who is dealing with a diagnosis of diabetes really wants to make sure that they are eating balanced meals in their own time so that they can maintain the pharmacological, the workings of those medications, because most of your diabetes or anti-diabetes medications, they are driven by either how much carbohydrate we're eating if you're taking insulin and how much food we consume or consuming. So you want to create meals, and the medications require you to take it with meals. So that's one thing you want to keep in mind. And having that at the forefront will definitely offset some things that could happen in the end, which could, I mean, these things that may seem very small, waiting too long to eat, with everything going on as a person with diabetes can also trigger some other conditions to occur, which can sometimes lead to emergency situations where you're in the ER. So now you got another situation where you're not able to enjoy the holiday because you weren't feeling well because you took so long to eat your meal, or maybe you forgot to take your medication, or you didn't take your medication because you were waiting for your meal, or I mean, it could be a number of scenarios. You took your medications, but you didn't eat. And so now you're not feeling well. So you want to make sure that you kind of look into the future, if you will, in terms of, if I do this, what impact is it going to have in the end? So making sure that you have those balanced meals and planning that, mentally planning, what am I going to do when I get to this party, who I know is an excellent chef, and they're going to have all of these things that I look forward to only this time of the year. How am I going to prepare myself for enjoying the party and also enjoy whatever the pleasures of my palate are? So one thing I would recommend is eating that balanced meal, making sure you eat before you go to the party so that you're not starving, and then you have just a little bit of room to enjoy and taste those foods, and still you can participate. And for some people, they go to parties and they don't want to participate because they know that this is not a good food form and it makes them stick out like a sore thumb. So one of the things you can do is to just make sure that you're prepared before that by preparing to have a meal before that. And the other thing would be to, if it's a party or a family member that you know well, or someone you feel that you can have that conversation with, go to them before and say, hey, I know your traditional meal is going to be X, Y, and Z, but would you consider preparing this for me? Because this is going to help me with maintaining my blood sugar levels. And I promise you, if you make those kinds of conversations ahead of time, because this is family, it's holiday, and everybody wants to participate and they want to have everybody around, I'm sure those accommodations will be made. So just planning ahead and making sure that you've done what you need to do to make sure you're ready for the occasion. And that is making sure you eat and making sure those meals are balanced, and eating something before you eat, because a lot of times the party is scheduled to start at 5, but it may not take off or jump off until 7. So if you're waiting for that meal to take place, that's a long window there. It could be the window for you to take that medication and you're waiting on this meal. So planning ahead would be my best recommendation, and knowing ahead of time, these are my limitations. This is what I'm going to put into place. And sometimes you have to make a decision. Am I going to be able to maintain myself and not overdo it in this setting? So yeah, taking that approach. Self-care.
That's a good word for us, Iris, especially this time of year when I know if listeners are anything like me, they want to enjoy lots of time with friends and family. I hate saying no to invitations. It's important, perhaps more so this time of year than any other, to be forward thinking and to plan ahead, and to make sure that those preparations are there before you get to the moment. And that will certainly set you up for success. That's great.
Absolutely. And a lot of times this is the time of year where we only get to see family and friends this time. So we don't want to miss that opportunity as well. So yeah, planning ahead of time and making sure that we are ready. And the other thing too is if you're traveling to an event, you want to make sure that you we talk about making sure your diet is in place, but you want to make sure that you are traveling with the right amount of medication. If you are going out of town, you've made those necessary arrangements to make sure you have a full load, if you will, of those medications to make sure you're covered with while you're traveling, getting a medical alert so that one will know that if something happens, that this person has a condition and we'll know what to do if should an emergency arrive. Having your medications packed in a place where someone else, a family member, knows how to get to those medications so that we can have access to them in the event something happens. Labeling those medications so that no one who may be in a position to assist us with a emergency or assist us with doing something for whatever reason, that they're not giving you this for that or that for the other. So labeling and making sure all of that stuff is readily available and read and has some readability to it for individuals who may be assisting you. And remember, if you're visiting other people, family members may know of your situation, but they're not familiar with the routine. So you have to kind of lay out that plan as well.
Most definitely.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that this is a busy time of year. Individuals will be celebrating Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or any number of local festive holidays. But right behind those, Iris, is another holiday, New Year's. And the New Year's time is when a lot of us think about resolutions, what efforts we're going to try to start in January that fall to pieces by February. But
Absolutely.
what recommendations would you have for both realistic and smart New Year's resolutions that we can be thinking of to really make better lifestyle choices and better healthy choices for us in the new year?
My recommendation for New Year resolutions is using the SMART goal approach. Make sure that it's something that's specific. Make sure that it's measurable. Make sure that it's attainable. Make sure it's realistic, and make sure that it's done within a timetable or a time frame. So if your goal is to eat more healthy, that's a big one, but you want to eat more healthy when, how, and with whom. So you want to spell it out. The more details you have about those goals, the more efficient and effective you are going to be in carrying out those goals. If it's a big, ambiguous goal, then I just want to eat better. It remains that way. So if I'm going to eat breakfast consistently between 8 and 9 every day, I'm going to have lunch on a regular basis every 4 hours after my breakfast, and I'm going to have my last meal before 7 p.m. And it's going to include, as specific and measurable and attainable and realistic you are, the more realistically you're going to be able to obtain those goals. And writing it out, putting it someplace where you can see it, and that's called accountability. And making sure that that even if you have these nice fancy goals, that it's okay that if you fall off the wagon, you just get up and start all over again, but not to beat yourself up about having not accomplished a goal, because even the best laid plans are sometimes have to be altered and changed. So just keeping that in mind. And I also like to say that while there are a number of individuals who have a diagnosis of diabetes, but we're not to look at it as a death sentence. It's just another situation that we have to monitor closely, and we have to manage it, but we have to make sure that we have the tools to self-manage it so that we're not putting ourselves at risk for further complications. I hope that answered your question.
It did. Yeah, thank you. That SMART acronym is really helpful for setting any kind of goals, but certainly in this area, the more specific and measurable and realistic and time bound we can make all of those, the better and more successful we will be in that. So
Absolutely.
thank you. Iris, kind of wrapping things up here, you mentioned the website for recipes, and I wonder if there are other resources that you might want to leave us with if folks want to continue doing some research on their own, or if they have other questions. Number one, how can they get in touch with you? And then number two, what other free or easily accessible resources are out there that folks should take advantage of?
Good question again. So my name is Iris McDuffie, and I'm a registered dietitian. I can be reached at 706-627-5864. And the other resource, and the one that I really want to kind of leave imprinted in your brain, if you will, would be No Diabetes by Heart. That's the American Diabetes Association. And when you go into that website, just search for No Diabetes by Heart, and it's going to pull up the No Diabetes by Heart initiative. That's a program that has many resources, and it's absolutely free. You can just go to that website, and there are a couple of links that you can get to that will start that initiative. And the good thing about that initiative is not only do they have the food hub or the recipe hub, but they have an Ask an Expert. Every second Monday of the month, they will have a Q&A, so to speak, where you can get online, and you can get all of this on the American Diabetes Association website, where you can ask the expert. So if you had issues about a medication you're taking, or if you're having difficulty monitoring your intake of carbohydrates, or anything that's related to diabetes that's going to assist you to be a better self-manager, you can get on that call from 6 to 7 and ask those questions. They have e-newsletters that are in English and Spanish. They even have a PowerPoint that gives you a good overview of what is diabetes, what is insulin, who is at risk for diabetes, what are those things you need to do when you have your visits with your physician, asking those questions and follow up, so that you'll know what you need to do to make sure that you're on top of your game. I always say know your numbers. Just lots of information that's embedded in that No Diabetes by Heart initiative. So if you're looking for resources, that would be a good place to start, because I promise you, it's not one of those where it's willy-nilly. You can just go in and see everything they have. It takes some time. So you could start today and still be following through all of the resources that they have that will help you with better managing your disease state, looking at some of those risk factors, how you can reduce those risk factors and or prevent. And the other thing is, it's not only for individuals who have diabetes, it's for individuals who want to make sure that they're not at risk for diabetes, or individuals who just want to know more about diabetes. There are huge amounts of individuals out there who've been diagnosed with diabetes, but there are lots of individuals who have not been diagnosed. So the information that you would gain from that is, if you've never been assessed for diabetes, that's another thing that you would be able to obtain, and know what the steps are to make that happen, how to have those conversations with your provider such that you know what your status is. I can't tell you how many times when I'm out in the community asking individuals if they're interested in finding out more about diabetes, and they say, well, I don't have it. Well, do you want to know how you cannot get it? Well, I don't have it. So, in other words, it's not a priority right now. If I don't have it, I don't need to know how I can't get it. And I always say, for those who are willing to lean in and listen, well, maybe it's not information you need now, and maybe it's not information that you will need for yourself, but it could be information that you could have that would enlighten and give someone else some information about how they might prevent it for themselves. So knowledge is power. And even if it's not information you can use, you never know who you're going to run into that may need that information, that have no clue. So if nothing else, you could be a resource for someone else.
Absolutely. That's so important, Iris. And just to add validity to that, from our experience at Lions Vision Services last year, 18%, that's almost 1 in 5 of the clients that went through our affordable eye surgery program were already diagnosed with diabetes. So whether or not it's something that is impacting you personally as an individual, it's probably impacting a family or loved one in your life. And we should all be striving to help be the best caregivers that we can for the friends and family around us. And with those kind of statistics, I'm sure that anyone watching this will know someone, whether friend or family, that is experiencing diabetes and could benefit from having more support in their life to help them on that journey. So to that end, I would like to encourage any local Lions clubs that might be watching this, that diabetes is one of the global causes of Lions Clubs International. And if your club is looking for ways to get involved, you can go to lionsclubs.org and go to the Start Your Service tab. If you go to the Service Launchpad, you can put together a whole questionnaire about how to start a diabetes-focused project. You can focus on diabetes and select whether or not you want a half-day project, a full-day project, multiple days, or ongoing, whether or not you want to benefit children or youth or the adults or all ages. And Lions Clubs International will give you turnkey ready project guides that will assist you and your club in planning events or providing services in your community that will help with diabetes prevention and diabetes management for those that need it. So it's a wonderful resource. And again, everyone at Lions Vision Services is committed to helping promote education and awareness of diabetes. You can learn more by going to our website as well, lionsvisionservices.org. And there's a host of additional resources there. You can also watch any of the recordings from our 2022 virtual event series, which was focused on diabetes education and support and prevention. And we invite you to reach out to Iris as well as anyone in our community of experts that can help you make the best decisions possible for your life and for your loved ones to better manage diabetes. So Iris, we thank you so much for joining us today and for helping us with this. Do you have any parting words of wisdom or any final calls to action for us?
Well, I'd like to say happy holidays to everybody, and I look forward to providing more of these nutrition tips / nuggets or information about diabetes and in management. And I'd like to say your health is your wealth. And again, if you have a diagnosis of diabetes or you want to prevent from getting diabetes, then these sessions would be beneficial to you because, as I said, it may not be information you can use right now, but it may be information you can share with family and or friends. And the whole idea is to increase awareness such that we are being advocates about making sure that we have an understanding of what diabetes is and who it has potential to affect. And even if you don't have it now, we want to make sure that that becomes the end story in the end, so that you'll know the tools and the toolbox and where you can get that information to prevent having the possibility of being at risk for it, if that makes sense. So happy holidays. Enjoy your holidays. Remember, you are what you eat, turkey, and enjoy your holidays, and remember to plan ahead so that you can enjoy the pleasures of your palate. And we look forward to seeing you in 2023 with lots of information that will assist you with becoming good self-managers of diabetes.
Thank you, Iris, and thank you all for joining us. Happy holidays.